In today's video, I want to talk about a U.S. Army soldier from Illinois who was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, James J. Snider. And his unit was the 132nd Infantry Regiment of the 33rd Division. And the way I understand it, this is a noteworthy division of the U.S. Army. These guys from Illinois were known for their bravery and they were decorated in battle. So this young man came from Chicago. His name was Snider, his name was James, and his brother was Thomas. They joined together. They went through their training together in Texas at Camp Logan, and they shipped out and landed in France, and they served together. And here's a photo of Thomas and James in their uniforms. Looks like they're in Europe. Don't ask me which is which. Didn't have any writing on the back, and I don't know. They sure look like brothers. Anyhow, it's a great picture. I love this picture. I did a little bit of Photoshop to it to fix it up a little bit, but there wasn't really much there to work with, but it's a really neat old picture. World War I. And you see they got the pistols on their side. That's probably the Colt 45 model 1911. That was a really new firearm back then. More than 100 years later, those are still a popular sidearm. The Distinguished Service Cross is a very lofty award to be given. The highest award you can get is the Medal of Honor. And many people that are awarded the Medal of Honor have died earning it. So it's given posthumously many times. The next highest award there is a Distinguished Service Cross. And this was established by the U.S. Army in 1918. When he was given this award, he was a private, and the way I understand it, after the award, he was upgraded in rank to become a sergeant. The Snider family had a lot of brothers, and their father was Frank Snider, and before that, their name was not Snider. They came from Europe, an area that sometimes changes countries between Austria and Czechoslovakia, and et cetera, et cetera. So when they arrived, their name was Zander, and it was spelled C-Z-N-D-R. Not a lot of vowels in there, right? After they were in America for a while, after landing in Iowa, one of the people, maybe it was Frank, and he said, let's change our name to something that sounds more American. So they came up with Snider. So why am I interested in James Snider and his brother Thomas Snider? Is because Thomas Snider was my grandfather. And it's an amazing thing that growing up, I knew that my grandfather was in World War I, but I didn't know that his brother was awarded such a distinguished medal. So recently when I found out about it, I thought, you know, that might make a good video to put on YouTube. So let's find out more about these guys and what they did more than 100 years ago. Here's what it says. Distinguished Service Cross to Private James J. Snider, United States Army, for extraordinary heroism in action while serving with Machine Gun Company, 132nd Infantry Regiment, 33rd Division, in the Bois de Forêt, France, 10th of October, 1918. After 6 runners had been killed or wounded in attempts to get through heavy shell fire with an important message from the regimental commander of the 39th Infantry to the regimental commander of the 59th Infantry, Private Snider, with Private Sidney Holzman, responded to a call for volunteers and succeeded in delivering the message. While engaged on this mission, Private Snider was badly gassed. So that is what the government said when they gave him his medal. It's pretty amazing too, because I looked it up a little bit more. The other private, Private Holzman, he stayed in the Army, and he earned his rank all the way up to a lieutenant colonel, and he died in 1967. I don't know what age he was, but he was a senior citizen. However, James, he did not live a long life. He did not have a nice house with a white picket fence and a wife and little kids running around. He had medical problems because of the gas that affected his lungs. He never married, never had children, and the way I understand it, he spent the rest of his life in a sanatorium in South Dakota. He's buried in South Dakota. He died December 18th, 1932, and is buried at the Evergreen Cemetery located in Hot Springs, South Dakota. and I never met him. He died in 1932 before I was born, and his brother Thomas is my mother's father. He died before she was even born. The mother was pregnant with the little baby, and he died in a fire. Anyhow, it's a very interesting story, and I want to tell in a few more details. My grandfather, Thomas Snider, kept a little diary while he was in World War I. This is very similar to what it was, a little tiny skinny book, and it had all kinds of writing in there. Some of it was faded. What I did for a project in 7th or 8th grade is I read the diary into a cassette tape.
This is the diary of my grandfather, Thomas Snider. The diary starts on January 1st, 1918, and ends on June 4th, 1919.
So the diary is gone. This is not it, but I don't know where it is, but I sure wish I had it. The cassette tape still exists, and it has been digitized. So it's very interesting as a guy my age to listen to this 12-year-old kid reading this diary with a boy's voice, and not such a high quality recording and microphone. And it does preserve those events of more than 100 years ago, and I'm very glad to have it. So I'll read a few of the entries. And I also have a letter that was written in 1918. So let's read a little bit from those diaries and from the letter. On the citation for the Distinguished Service Cross, it said it was awarded for his activities on the 10th of October, 1918. So in his brother's diary, a couple days after that, here's what it says. Jim was gassed, but not bad, thank God, but he went to the hospital. So that's a little entry there, and that is October. Then many times after that, he's saying, no word from Jim, no word from Jim. Then in his diary on December 2nd, it says, Jim finally came back to the company, and he's looking fine, and he's now a headquarters sergeant. So the way I understand it, because of his bravery, he was not only given the medal, but he was also given a promotion from private to sergeant. I knew from the letter that these guys went over the top. So if you don't know what that means, you're down there in a trench, underground, with bombs and bullets and stuff whizzing overhead, and every now and then they blow a bugle, and you climb up a ladder out of the trench and go charging across the no man's land, shooting and running through the mud. And that's where many people's lives ended. So when they say, let's go over the top, it takes a lot of courage to leave the relative safety of your trench and go up there where there's all kinds of machine gun bullets flying around and shells exploding. So here's what it said in the letter. This was September 26th is the day that they went over the top. So here's the brother, Thomas, telling about going over the top. September 25th. Things are pretty quiet here, but the stage is set for the big show. I'm an ammo sergeant now. I went up one platoon, and we all sang songs until the hop over. Left our dugout at 11 p.m. We're waiting for the hop over. Let's go. Then the next day's entry is this. After hiking all night through the trenches and across a marsh, we got to our objective about 7:30. One wounded and one missing. We are sitting tight now, waiting for the Jerrys to come back. I thought of Dot all night long. So his fiancée was Dot, and Jerry's is the slang term for German soldiers. That was the diary. Now this is the letter. This is not the whole letter. This is excerpts of it when he was writing to his fiancée. I went over the top in the first wave and had a chance at Jerry, and we sure gave him a run for his money. I helped capture a machine gun nest with 24 Jerrys in it, and when they saw they had no chance, they threw up their hands and yelled, "Mercy, comrade." Oh, it was an exciting morning. September 26th is the date we went over. We started at 5 a.m. and went through a marsh knee-deep in mud and water, shells bursting 10 to 15 feet right and left of us, but the brave and gallant boys of the 132nd never hesitated for a minute and advanced silently. And before Jerry knew it, we had Jerry on the run. Our doughboys are a brave bunch and certainly do not fear Jerry. Our company had one casualty. One of our men got hit by a whiz-bang. I had a piece of metal bounce off my steel helmet. I've got the piece. I'll send it to you. Also a German cap and a German sewing kit you can keep as souvenirs of my first trip over the top. And honey, just before we left our trenches to go over, our chaplain, Father O'Donnell, came through and gave us absolution. And he came right with us. He's a brave man and stays with us all the time. Jim is right. We have only to trust God and let him lead us safely or leave us here as he sees fit. P.S. Let all know Jim and I went over the top safely. So I'm really happy to have this letter and diary. It's an interesting first-hand account from events more than 100 years ago in the war, World War I. Thanks a lot for watching my video, and I'm always making more videos. It's not all about old cameras. I have a lot of different topics. So tune in, and thanks a lot. It was a little book, and it had some of all that. He gave me a little book, and tune in more. You'll never know